Sarah Matthews sat quietly in the pristine waiting room, her hands folded nervously in her lap, though she had unclasped and refolded them several times already. Her palms were damp, and she tried not to notice how her fingers trembled slightly against the smooth fabric of her skirt. The morning sunlight filtered through tall glass windows, casting gentle, almost fragile shadows across the polished marble floor. Everything about the place gleamed with order, wealth, and precision. Beside her, 4-year-old Emma swung her little legs from the adult-sized chair. Her shoes didn't quite touch the ground, so they kicked softly at the air, brushing against the smooth surface of the chair legs. Her yellow dress, a cheerful splash of color, stood out against the muted creams, grays, and silvers of the corporate lobby. Emma's hair ribbon bobbed with every movement, and now and then, she leaned over to whisper something to her mother, questions about the world around her, questions only a child would think to ask. The headquarters of the financial consulting firm was everything Sarah had imagined it would be. Clean lines, expensive artwork, the subtle hum of success that seemed to vibrate through every surface. It was as though even the air here was conditioned not just for temperature, but for ambition. For weeks, she had dreamed of this moment ever since she received the call for an interview. She had read the email again and again, rehearsed every possible question, carefully planned her outfit, and tried to steady her nerves each night before sleep. After 2 long years of struggling as a single mother, working part-time jobs that barely covered rent and groceries, this position represented more than employment. It represented stability, dignity, and a chance to reclaim the dreams she had set aside. Sarah smoothed down her navy blazer, one of only 2 professional outfits she owned. She had borrowed this one from her neighbor, a kind woman who knew too well the delicate balance of appearances in professional life. The blazer was a little tighter at the shoulders than Sarah was used to, but it looked sharp, neat, respectable. Her resume was solid, her qualifications strong. She had worked hard for her degree in finance, even while pregnant, but she knew the competition would be fierce. What she hadn't expected, however, was the problem sitting right beside her, Emma. Her babysitter had cancelled that morning. Food poisoning, she had said in a raspy, apologetic voice over the phone, leaving Sarah with an impossible choice. Miss the interview she had prepared for so carefully, or bring Emma along and hope, pray, for understanding. She had phoned the office, her voice tight with embarrassment as she explained her situation to the receptionist. After a long pause, the receptionist had agreed, hesitantly, that she could bring her daughter. Now, seated in the waiting room, Sarah began to second-guess her decision. The other candidates she had glimpsed that morning had all seemed polished and effortless. Men in crisp suits carrying leather briefcases that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. Women in tailored dresses and designer heels, walking with the kind of confidence that came from never worrying about childcare falling through at the last minute. Not one of them had a preschooler trailing behind them. Emma, bless her heart, was doing her very best. She sat quietly most of the time, her wide eyes darting between the fish tank in the corner and the strange modern sculptures scattered across the room. Every now and then she leaned toward Sarah, whispering questions. Why are the fish all hiding in the castle? Why does that statue look like it's falling over? Why is that lady's shoes so shiny? Sarah answered in soft murmurs, doing her best to keep Emma entertained while ignoring the glances that some staff members threw their way. Not cruel glances, exactly, just disapproving. Silent judgments from people who assumed that if Sarah couldn't arrange proper childcare, she couldn't possibly be serious about the position. At last, a tall woman in an expensive suit approached. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, and her smile was polite but thin. Mrs. Matthews, she said, her voice clipped and efficient. I'm Jennifer Walsh, the hiring manager. Would you like to come back for your interview? Sarah stood up quickly, heart pounding. Yes, thank you. She hesitated, glancing at Emma. And I'm sorry again about bringing my daughter. My sitter was sick, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Jennifer's smile flickered, not quite reaching her eyes. Yes, well, I'm afraid there's been a slight change in plans. Her words came carefully, but they landed heavily. After discussing it with the team, we feel it would be best to reschedule your interview for a time when you can arrange appropriate childcare. We need candidates who can demonstrate their commitment to the position. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. All the air seemed to drain out of her lungs. She had driven 40 minutes in her old Honda, its engine coughing and whining all the way. She had spent her last $20 on gas, certain this chance would be worth the sacrifice. She had worn her lucky earrings, whispered a prayer that morning, and told Emma with excitement that today might change everything. "I understand," Sarah said quietly, her voice catching despite her effort to keep it steady. "I am committed, Mrs. Walsh, more than you might realize. But, I respect your decision." She reached for Emma's hand, swallowing hard against the tears that threatened to spill. This was exactly what she had feared. In the 2 years since her husband had left, every opportunity seemed to come with obstacles that others never had to face. The balancing act between being a good mother and building a career was exhausting. Some days, it felt impossible. Emma looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Are we leaving, Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "We need to go." They walked toward the elevator together. Sarah's mind was already racing through her dwindling options, the rent due in a week, Emma needing new shoes before the cold weather set in, the car's strange grinding noise she couldn't afford to have checked. This job would have solved so many problems. The elevator doors were closing when a firm hand reached out, holding them open. "Wait just a moment." Sarah looked up, startled. A man in a navy suit stepped into the elevator with them. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and graying temples that softened his otherwise commanding presence. He looked like a man accustomed to being listened to, but there was nothing harsh about him. Instead, there was a gentleness, an attentiveness, that even Emma seemed to sense. She smiled up at him immediately, the way children instinctively respond to warmth. "I couldn't help but overhear the conversation back there," the man said, his voice calm and measured. He glanced at Sarah. "You're Sarah Matthews, here for the financial analyst position." Sarah blinked, confused. "Yes." Though apparently not anymore. The man's lips curved into a faint smile. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't place it. "I'm David Chen," he said, extending his hand. Sarah's breath caught. David Chen. She had seen his name countless times in business magazines, read profiles about him as one of the most respected entrepreneurs in finance. He was a legend, a man who had built an empire from nothing, whose story was told in classrooms and corporate seminars alike. She had never imagined she would meet him face to face, let alone like this. "Mr. Chen," she stammered, shaking his hand. I'm so sorry about the confusion today. I should have rescheduled when my childcare fell through." David glanced down at Emma, who was studying him with fearless curiosity. "And who might this be?" "This is Emma," Sarah said. "My daughter. She's 4. David crouched slightly, meeting Emma at her level. "Hello, Emma," he said, with the seriousness of greeting another adult. "It's very nice to meet you." Emma giggled, clearly pleased. "Your building is really tall. I counted all the floors on the buttons. There are 23. David's brows lifted. "You're absolutely right. That's excellent counting." He looked back at Sarah, and she was surprised to see no judgment in his eyes. Only understanding. "Tell me, Mrs. Matthews," he said, "why did you want to work for our company?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She had rehearsed answers to this question 100 times. But standing here, in an elevator, holding her daughter's small hand and looking into the eyes of the CEO himself, all the polished answers seemed inadequate. "Because I need to build something stable for Emma," she said, her voice low but steady. "I have a degree in finance. I'm good with numbers. But more than that, I need a place where I can grow, where I can prove that being a single mother doesn't make me less capable or less dedicated. I need to show Emma that hard work and determination can overcome obstacles." David listened carefully. "I appreciate your honesty. May I ask what happened to your childcare today?" Sarah explained about the babysitter's sudden illness, about the impossible choice she faced, and about the past 2 years of juggling part-time jobs. She spoke of the exhaustion, of the countless small sacrifices, of the determination that carried her forward even when the odds felt stacked against her. When she finished, David was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Emma. "And what do you think, Emma, about your mom looking for a new job?" Emma tilted her head, thinking carefully. "Mommy works really hard. Sometimes she's tired, but she always makes me pancakes and reads me stories. She says if she gets a good job, maybe we can get a house with a yard for me to play in." Something softened in David's face. A flicker of memory crossed his expression, as though Emma's words had touched something deep and personal. You know, he said, pressing the button to pause the elevator between floors, I started this company 25 years ago as a single father. My wife had passed away. I had 2 young children to raise. I remember interviews where employers questioned my commitment because I needed to leave for school plays or stay home with sick kids. Sarah's eyes widened. She had never read this part of his story in the glossy articles. The difference between us and others, David continued, isn't that we're less dedicated. It's that we're more motivated. We're not just working for ourselves. We're working for our children's futures. He released the button and the elevator began to move again. I'd like to offer you a different kind of interview, Mrs. Matthews. One where we talk about your qualifications, your goals, and your ideas for contributing to our company. Emma is welcome in my office. I keep coloring books and puzzles there for my grandchildren. Sarah's throat tightened. Are you serious? Completely, David said with a small smile. I built this company on the principle that talent and dedication matter more than convention. If my hiring manager can't see past a mother bringing her child to an interview, then perhaps she needs to reconsider what we truly value. On the 20th floor, David led them into his spacious corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Emma pressed her hands to the glass in awe, pointing out tiny cars far below. David pulled a box of toys from a cabinet, setting them on a low table, and Emma settled happily to color. For the next hour, Sarah had the most genuine interview of her life. David asked thoughtful questions about her experience, her analytical skills, her vision for her career. They discussed market trends, investment strategies, and the industry's biggest challenges. With every question, Sarah grew more confident, her passion for the work shining through. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not just as a mother struggling to get by, but as a professional with knowledge, potential, and ambition. When they finished, David walked them back to the elevator. Mrs. Matthews, he said, I'd like to offer you the position. The salary is competitive. We offer health benefits, an on-site daycare, and flexible scheduling for parents who need to attend school events or handle family emergencies. Sarah stood frozen, her breath caught in her chest. Really? Emma piped up. Mommy gets the job. David smiled at her warmly. She certainly does, if she wants it. Sarah's tears finally spilled over, but this time they were tears of relief. Yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely. As they rode the elevator down, Emma chattered excitedly about the toys in Mr. Chen's office and the view from the tall windows. Sarah barely heard her. She was still processing the dramatic turn her day had taken. At the lobby, David handed her his card. Welcome to the team, Sarah. I look forward to working with you. Walking back to her car, Sarah felt lighter than she had in months. She thought of the house with a yard Emma had dreamed of the stability this job would bring, of the future that suddenly felt bright again. Sometimes rejection was only a doorway to something better. Sometimes, the right person appeared at exactly the right moment. And sometimes, being true to who you are, including being a devoted mother, was exactly what opened the door to your dreams.